Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're joined by a special guest, Catherine Lee. She is a writer, director of the Creative Coterie, and a member of the Iowa Young Writers Studio. The Creative Coterie is a youth-run guild dedicated to amplifying youth writers and artists through collaboration and creative opportunities. They are currently working on their very first print magazine, Project Metamorphosis. Join us today as we discuss finding your creative voice, building spaces where young artists can thrive, and why storytelling has the power to reshape the way we see the world. Welcome to this episode of Rose Tinted Ceilings, where we break glass ceilings to let girls shine. You're listening to episode 115 with Catherine. Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Hi, I'm Catherine. Thank you so much for having me. This is really cool. Um, so I'm an independent writer, so I write like fiction and nonfiction on my own, and I'm also the founder of the Creative Coterie, which started as a collective for like young artists and writers to come together and support each other in our craft, but it kind of grew as a way to give back to community members who haven't always been represented in like storytelling and media and publishing, because we're like an indie grassroots organization. We get to like highlight those voices who haven't yet been heard a lot yet. So that's like the project that I'm working on that I'm super passionate about.
That is so cool. And we love this whole idea of representation and emphasizing representation for people who might not experience that. So I want to ask you, why do you think there are so many young creatives who struggle to find that kind of representation, who struggle to get their work out there?
Yeah, I really think um a lot of young people, especially like in like Toronto and in Canada, are not aware of like the vast amount of opportunities that are out there, and then a lot of the opportunities that are like well known and established in the industry right now are like geared towards really established writers or people with like a lot of money who can pay for like programs, or just people that aren't well they aren't as welcoming to like youth, and especially people from minorities and who are in underserved populations right now. So I think um a big part of the reason why is like traditionally like the publishing industry and like the literary industry has been just so focused on like people who are already very privileged and are kind of driving society. So I think one of the best things that we can do right now to give like young people more opportunity to like speak and to be heard is giving them the opportunity to like show their voices through their creative works, whether it be through like art or writing, storytelling, things like that.
Oh, I love that. That is so powerful, just as its own piece. And I'm curious for you. It sounds like you've been writing for a long time. This has been quite a long journey for you, starting your guild, the Creative Coterie, as well. And I'm curious if you remember what it is that like first sparked your love for storytelling, and what inspired you to start your project as well.
I mean, I've always really loved writing and books and movies and just stories in general ever since I was really young. And when I came to Canada for the first time when I was like 9 years old, I like brought it with me, and it was kind of my way of like feeling like I belonged um when I was like a foreigner, when I was like an immigrant and I couldn't like speak English properly. I would like use storytelling as a way to like connect with others and to be like, hey, like I have a place here too. And then the Creative Coterie, the idea for that like came when I was working as a part of the Young Voices Teen Council, which is um a literary magazine that the Toronto Public Library runs, and I was a part of the team that runs it. I still am actually. And through that team, I just kind of realized like how many youth there are that are like me, who are really passionate about storytelling and who love it so much and who have so much talent and potential. And so I thought, okay, hey, why not like make a community out of us that are like driven by youth and are just comprised of youth, and see where we can take it.
Absolutely. And this might just be me because I'm not, a super like a creative or in that field. But I feel like oftentimes when people hear like the word creative, there might be this image of like this lone painter in his room with no friends. So I want to ask you, like, what is the importance of community to you and having that creative community around you?
Yeah, I think it is a huge misconception that people think like, oh, being creative is like having like 100% control over everything. And it's like if you make like if like a film director sees one person make a mistake, they're like scream at you or something like that, like having 100% control. But like big books, publications, magazines, movies, they're all a work made by like hundreds of people most of the time. Like it's very rare that like one person will create something that big or something that like impactful just by themselves. And especially with us youth, we're still developing and we're still learning to hone our craft. So I think it's especially important to like seek each other and community to be able to like support each other when we like hear back from literary magazines and we're rejected or we don't hear back from something we applied for. It's really important to not just feel like you're alone in this abyss. And that's kind of also what I felt for a lot of the time. Like before I started the Creative Coterie, I felt like, okay, is there anyone else in the world that is my age and loves writing as much as I do? And I just felt like I was like knocking on all the doors, being like, let me in. So I feel like like community, making sure that young people know there is community and there are like-minded people around them is really important in helping them like thrive and grow in the future into more successful and more creative artists.
Oh, that is beautiful. You have such a way with words. Well, I guess that makes sense. I was saying it like I'm surprised, and I'm like, oh wait, she's a writer. It makes sense.
Thank you so much.
You're just like oozing with passion. I'm just so curious now, like with this like depth of knowledge that you have, and clearly so much experience with writing, and as well as like engaging with other people's art. Like, what do you think makes a good story? How can, if someone really wants to become a storyteller, what can they do?
Hmm.
I think that the best stories that I've read and the best writers that I've met or I've read, they all come from a place of like humility and curiosity about the world, almost like awe at seeing the world around them. I've read some like stories or essays written by people who talk as if they like know the entire world and they're just gonna like lecture you with their grand wisdom and like give you this important knowledge, and they're never ever as compelling as a writer who comes from a place of like humility of like, oh, I don't know this world and the world is like unknowable, but I want to do my best to explore it and to explore its unknowability and just to embrace that. So I think that like the best thing that we can do as writers and storytellers is to embrace the fact that we can't ever know the world fully, and that all that we can do is like explore it and to be curious about it. So like having that sense of like humility and like excitement about the world I think is really important.
That is so thoughtful. That was such a good answer. We got like philosophical for a moment. Like I'm like, wow, like that. I guess that's the meaning of life. Like I guess we solved it. But
No, it was so great.
I want to touch on a thing you mentioned like slightly earlier, where you talked about how it is tough to deal with rejection in these creative spaces where you're submitting things and you might not get accepted in things. And now we've gone over how works can be very, very humble. They can be a part of you. It can be a part of a writer. So I think when I'm hearing that, I can imagine that it's especially tough for young creatives. Of course, handling rejection is tough for everyone, right? But coming from a place where it's something you pour your heart and soul into. So for the young creatives out there, is there anything you can say to them that might help them navigate that kind of journey?
Oh my gosh. I think like that's something that I've also struggled with all the time too. Just like rejection, it never gets easier. And like when I talk to people who's been in the industry for like 20, 30 years, they still say it like very rarely gets
Mhm.
easier. You feel just as bad when you get rejected, but I think just knowing that it doesn't necessarily always have to do with the quality of your work, so you should never base your like the value that you have in your work based on like the input that you get from external factors. You should always have it within like yourself and understand that your work is valuable to you and it can always be improved. And so getting in or getting accepted doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, my work is perfect either, right? Like it, you can always improve, and that's kind of where you should put your values as a creative person is like, oh, what does this work mean for me? What does it mean for my journey? And how can I continue to improve it rather than like, oh, what can this work get me from um external publications or awards or things like that. Although it is really hard, especially when people make their living off of art and they have to put so much value on like what brings them income. But I think as like young people who like are still developing and like who don't necessarily have to like rely on this to like bring us an income or anything like that. I think it's like the most important thing is to understand what your work means to you, how it brings you joy and growth, and to grow in it, like regardless of what kind of input you're getting.
I really like what you mentioned about being a young writer or young creative specifically and being open to that growth. And that brings me to, well, I'm very curious for you in your journey. Is there something that you thought when you first started writing that was became like a total misconception? Like you just totally changed your mind about it. I'm curious if there is something.
Yeah, there is. I actually think for a long time I just thought that like writing was this like magical process where like the words and like the images and thoughts would just kind of like conjure up in my mind in my imagination and you know when writer you ask writers like, "Oh, where do you get your ideas?" and it's just like no, like you don't know where you get your ideas. It's just like a process of magic and I thought that I was supposed to be like magically good at writing just like that. But um writing like sort of like I'm a musician. I play an instrument, so I know if you play like anything like sports or instruments, it's a skill and it's just something that you do over and over again and you get better at. Like if I play the tuba and if I make one wrong sound on the tuba or like I play a wrong note, that I'm not gonna put it down and be like, oh, I'm an awful musician. I'm never gonna play it ever again. You just think, oh, okay, that was pretty bad. Let me try again. Let me try to fix it. So I think something I've learned with writing is that it's the same thing. Just because I wrote something that's really god awful and never want to see it again doesn't mean that I'm a bad writer. It just means that I made something that doesn't reflect the kind of skill that I want to show. And it means that I can keep on going and I can improve it and I can make better works in the future. So what you make isn't always a reflection of your skill, you know? You can go up and down. So that's something that I learned.
I love that. I feel like people don't usually frame being creative as a skill. So I think that's such an interesting perspective to be on it. So I want to ask, I don't know if you have any specific tips for this, but how do people hone that skill? Like how do people improve on their like writing or their artistry?
I feel so unqualified to speak on this. Just like I don't even think my skill is like anything close to where it needs to be, and I feel like so um unqualified to give people like advice on how to like hone their craft because I'm in the process of honing it myself. But something I think has worked for me is like obviously like finding other people like like-minded people who will help you and to support you in your journey, specifically not even just like peers like friends who are into writing but also mentors and maybe people who are less experienced than you that you can mentor and you can be sort of a helping hand to. Like all three of those kinds of relationships like help you grow in your own way and actually has helped my writing more than I could have even imagined. So I think just reaching out to different people, whether they be mentors or mentees or just your peers, I think is something really important.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, this sounds like it must have helped you a lot. And I'm curious if you have a favorite piece now that you've written and where we can find it.
Oh, I am currently working on a short story that I'm going to send out and publish eventually. Um, I don't think I can like reveal a lot yet, but it is a like a absurdist magical realism type of story, and it's something to look out for because I am working on it currently right now.
We are sad. We will be tuned. We send that to us. Like we are excited. Um, man, speaking of you, Catherine has got me feeling my creative juices. And I'm just like, you know what? What are some things you've been reading recently? What are some things you've been watching? What can you recommend the viewers? What do we check out?
Oh, I really have to recommend. I'm a huge fan of absurdism and magical realism. I love like fantasy and like really weird, funky fiction. So at this year when I went to the Iowa Young Writers Studio, I was recommended to read works from an amazing short story writer called Kelly Link, and she writes such incredible like modern fantasy stories that are in that intertwine these really weird, bizarre elements of like fantasy with real life and present them in such like jarring and almost kind of humorous ways. So I definitely recommend Kelly Link. And I also think that a great another great fantasy writer is Angela Carter. She's more of like a classic fantasy and magical realism author, but I was also recommended her by my instructor at Iowa Young Writers Studio, and I really love anything written by her.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we have this on recording so Maggie and I can look back. We love funky and silly stuff. So thank you for those recommendations. To wrap us up today, would love to ask you for any last pieces of advice that you'd like to give the girls listening, any advice generally.
Oh, I think that I would give the kind of advice that I wish I had heard when I was like, I don't know, in middle school or something. I was so shy in middle school and I was like I would read and I would write, but I wouldn't really talk to other people and I thought like, oh, like I'm not like other people. I'm like not cool enough or I'm not like qualified enough to talk to other people. I think that um you like never really know until you like go out there and like pursue things, and I think a really good mindset to have is to just be willing to like throw yourself at stuff that you want to do and just like throw your entire life at it and like to try really hard, and even when you don't get the result that you want, don't let it discourage you and don't let it like hurt you. Just have that kind of like resilience and like enthusiasm to just go at like whatever it is you want to pursue, and I think then like it's inevitable like something will work out for you and like good things will happen.
Wow, I felt that in my heart.
Yeah,
That'll
for
be
real.
so helpful to all our young viewers. So again, thank you so much, Catherine, for coming on, sharing your story. Oh, story, huh? Get it? Sharing yours, your your story, your advice with us all. I know we've got the short story coming out soon, but where else can our viewers find you?
I was published in the 2024 edition of the Young Voices magazine. You can find me there. I'm also in many editions, like the past edition of the Creative Coterie's anthology and on our blog as well. That's where you can find me currently.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.